Hello YouTube, video number 8 on the 1911 by knifemaker build. Just got back from the range. This was the gun's first test, first time it's fired. And the good news is it's safe, it works. Put about 125, maybe 130 rounds through it. And so that's what we're going to talk about, what happened there. I used a number of magazines, including the Rock Island that came with the lower. Nice good finish on that, flat follower. This GI looking thing, which is probably what it is with a flat follower. This guy with a rounded follower, stamped Colt, maybe that means it's made by Colt. Maybe that just means it's for the Colt ammunition. This one is stamped the same way, but I tend to think the Colt manufacturer, because they have the same follower. One's a lot longer, I think that's a 10 round. Which I didn't like. I prefer the flush fit magazines. The ammunition we used was 3 types. One I don't have a box for because several of the magazines that were in the bottom of the shooting bag, and these aren't all of them, I've got about 12 of them. They were preloaded with Federal. I don't have that box, I don't know the grain. I think it was a 230 grain. The Blazer brass is 230 grain full metal jacket, and the defense ammo I was testing was the Winchester PDX-1 Defender, 230 grain. The good news was all the ammo was hitting in about the same spot on the paper. I couldn't notice any appreciable difference whatsoever. So that's good. That means I can train with this ammo or the Federal stuff and carry this and have similar or predictable results. Unfortunately, I shot it all, so I've got to go get another box of this before this goes into the carry rotation. Let's talk about reliability. The gun, when I assembled it, after putting the finish on it and letting it cure a couple of days, I took one of these Q-tips and I put 4 dots of oil, one on presumably all 4 sides of it to kind of soak the tip, and I put it inside the trigger bow channel, dabbed a little, just wiped a little on top of the disconnect, put nothing on the sear, nothing on the springs, nothing on the barrel, the lugs, the bushing, and then when I got to, I swapped it inside the firing pin channel. Nothing on the thumb safety, nothing on this part, nothing in this spring, nothing on the grip safety, and with whatever oil was left, I swapped it on the rails when I put it together. So the gun was very dry by 1911 standards, if my understanding that these things perform more lubrication than other more modern firearms is correct. So it was pretty dry, but I wanted a baseline. I don't like wet, drippy guns. These things are already the Harley Davidson of handguns. I don't want it to be as greasy as one as well, dripping oil everywhere. So I wanted a baseline. I fired it with bare minimum lubrication. In that 125, 130 rounds, whatever it was I fired, I had 4 malfunctions, and they were all the same, and all came after about the 70th round, as the gun was getting really, really dirty. After the first one, looked into the chamber, and it's really black in there. It was a polished chamber, so I did what I could to stick a rag in there with my finger. I didn't disassemble the gun, just kind of wiped some of it out, and it worked for a while. And then I got a couple more. I got one with the Federal, I got 2 with the Blazer, and I got 1 with the defense ammo right at the end of the day. So I don't think it's an ammunition issue. I don't think it's having a problem feeding the hollow points. That was only one occasion, and when the gun was very dirty and very dry. So the throating on the barrel was successful, in my opinion. I will probably polish the top, the underside of the hood, top of the barrel in the chamber, because that's where it was hanging up as the round is coming off. After the slide comes back and the round is getting stripped off the slide, it hung up at the angle. And that's the way it happened every time. That was the only type of malfunction there was. So could just be a polish issue at the top. Don't think it was a magazine issue because it happened on 4 different magazines. I know it happened with this one, I know it happened with that, and I know it happened with that, or ones like that, because I've got multiples of each of these. So the magazine didn't seem to matter. Curiously enough, when I was jamming one of these types, I've got 2 of these, when I was jamming one of these types up in there, I managed to go past the slide catch, which was curious because it was long enough and I'm used to slapping it up in there. So I'll have to be careful if I use those in the future. I may just get rid of them. Gun's dirty. That carbon on the front really looks good with the distressed finish. But it was working and it was safe. One of the problems with about every magazine, you can hear this grip and you can see how loose it is. That was both of them. That's all 4 screws. It seems like every magazine I was having to tighten those up. And of course, I did not have my screwdriver in my bag, so I'm using brass. I'm using the nail file that I've got in my cleaning kit. Just whatever I could tighten them up. So as soon as I turn the camera off from this video, I will be putting blue Loctite on to get those a little more permanent. Let's talk about accuracy. I used several targets, but I've chosen a couple to highlight the point. This was early in the shoot. This is 8 rounds of the Blazer brass and 8 rounds of the PDX-1 defense ammo. Blazer brass had a couple in here, a couple over here. The defense ammo was the same. So this is a conglomeration, and there were hits in both of these areas. So that's shooter inconsistency. This was 7 yards and standing unsupported. So the point of aim was hazarding a little bit to the left. Kept shooting, kept function testing, did a couple of speed drills with it. I wasn't really training from the holster. I was just testing the function of the gun under various conditions. Go out to 25 yards. And I was hitting, now with these MS Big Dot sights, the instructions that come with them, you line them up like so, focusing on the front sight, which this camera happens to be doing. It's not what you call a precision sight. All right, you're supposed to put the entire front sight over the target at close ranges, and your point of impact is under the center tritium dot. At distance, you're supposed to line your target up with your point of impact on top of your front sight, as you would with a traditional sight. So you're stacking the rear sight, the front sight, and then your point of impact. And your point of impact should be along the top edge of the white ring. That was not my experience. At 25 yards, my elevation, I was covering the target using, at first my point of impact, or my point of aim, lining up with the top of that front sight was here. And I was hitting way down here. So then I made my point of aim here, and I'm hitting here. So I've changed my elevation and was aiming for the center, and my point of impact was right here. So my elevation, using the center of the front sight covering at 25 yards, as we're supposed to do with short range, was giving me success at the longer ranges. So beyond 25 yards, maybe I would have to change that. But up to 25 yards, my point of aim is the center of the front sight. I have to cover my target with it. So that was useful data. My point of impact was over here. So I adjusted my sights in the field, gave them a little tap to the right, which of course was the exact opposite direction. Classic mistake. I moved the sights to the right, so in order to bring it back, I've got to move the barrel back to the left. So then I was running out of ammo at this point, and I had a few shots of the defense ammo, so I lined up with the PDX-1 at 25 yards, and instead of bringing my point of impact over here where I expected it, I brought it right over here. This one was just a flyer. Felt that jerk. But here's my group at 25 yards. Considering my skill with a handgun and how long it's been and the irregularity with which I shoot, that's a pretty decent group for me at 25 yards. Had I made the sight adjustment correctly, that group would be here, which is more than satisfactory at that range. So I'm going to have to change my adjustment on my sight. I had it lined up pretty much centered. I tapped it over to the right just a hair. Should have tapped it over to the left. So I'll get that fixed, and I will gauge the tightness of it while I'm doing that. And if I think I need to tighten it, I will pull it out and Loctite under it. Maybe expand the dimples that I put under the leading and rear edge of that. Those dimples to the right and left of that white ring are not mine. That's what my gunsmith did, much to my dismay. But we'll get those lined up, and I will test again. When I test again, I'll use the same types of ammo, and I will do it with more liberal lubrication. I will do it with the correct, I'll have a screwdriver in my bag, and I'll do it with the correct tools for adjusting the front sight as needed. But the gun is safe. It's not quite reliable enough for me to put into carry rotation at this point. I'll do a little polish on the barrel, and hopefully we'll get that point of impact right where it needs to be. So that's it for now. We'll see you.